Dave Palumbo standing here with Chris the Technician Aceto and Chad Nicholls, and we're about to wrap up the Mr. Olympia Prejudging that just let out. Chad, a super controversial show because when people are not all in shape and all the guys who show up don't show up the way we expect, things go awry.
It definitely goes awry. I'll tell you that for sure. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I think after last year, everybody expected Phil to be at least very close. I think I did. I predicted that he would be at least 95%.
How off was Phil Heath?
I thought he was way off, actually. But it's a different version of Phil that we've seen. We've seen Phil full, and we've seen him a little bit flat. He was drastically flat this year and much smaller. And because of that, because of his narrow clavicles, if he's not at least 90-95% full, then he just disappears. And in this lineup, he was out of the top four, which is where they've, the guys that they've got up there, he was clearly the smallest guy on stage.
You agree with that, Chris Aceto?
I think the assessment is dead on. That's why Chad's going to smash him at the Guru Summit tomorrow. if the other guys dare to show up against him.
Will Hani make it after having to babysit
He'll have
Phil?
to pull out. He will definitely have to pull out. I agree. Listen, I thought that Phil was in the lineup, looked markedly like, how do you know which guy's the Mr. Olympia up there? He in the side, when he's transitioning into the side chest shots, he looked markedly narrower than in the past. And I've always criticized people who criticize him on the narrow issue, because I said, don't bother me, because his delts and triceps usually blown up. And this year, he did not have the wow when he came out, or any part of prejudging. And usually he can put these guys away somewhere. Somewhere he can put them away. And he struggled all the way through prejudging to establish himself as really like a defending champion or a dominant champion or somebody who's out there to take this title.
In that final call out, I'm going to say though, at the very, very end, I felt Phil came on a little bit. I don't know if Sean was fading a little bit there when they had the two of them in the middle next to each other. I thought that Phil filled out a little. I thought he got a little bit of exuberance back in his physique, a little more pop. Still was lacking the size and fullness for certain, but I thought the conditioning was there. He seemed to have fared better than some of these other guys who seemed to have faded. Now you thought, well, tell us who you thought won prejudging.
I'm going to tell you, I think Dennis Wolf won prejudging because I think...
Based on what?
Based off of just overall size, overall shape, and overall conditioning. When you compare all of them to the rest of the guys, he's obviously bigger, but he also has that wow factor. And when you looked at everybody had a little something. They had a little something that was off here, off there. And I'm not saying that Wolf was 100%. He had some issues too, but I thought when you looked at everybody, I thought that he was one of the guys that was very dominant. He was hard, he was grainy. I thought that he maintained his conditioning, because usually he's a guy that fades very quickly from the time we first see him, then when he managed to get back up on stage for the comparisons. I thought that he managed to maintain his conditioning and fullness pretty well. And I'll tell you, the other guy I was impressed with was Dexter. I thought
let's talk about Dennis Wolf for a minute, because I personally thought Dennis Wolf from behind had nothing going on. I thought he was flat in the upper back. I thought his glutes disappeared, toward the end of prejudging because he was so flat. To me, he looked good in the standing, relaxed in the front, but then he kind of just, when he turned around, I lost it. He lost it for me, at least.
Two things about Dennis Wolf. When he first came out, I thought, wow, he may win the show. And I said in the pre-game show that minus Kai in the lineup, his height and width was going to count for something, and it did against Phil. Narrowness. That said, I was surprised. I was really surprised. I don't know if it's the dark skin, the lights. I thought from behind against the three black guys. I don't mean that. That they have
Rhoden, Dexter, and
see
Phil.
More stuff going on in the glutes, hams, back.
For who?
All three of them. Dexter, Phil, and Sean versus Wolf. My nervous meter went up when Dennis was called out, which I thought, wow, see, his height and width is going to help.
Where did you have him finishing?
It was negated. I had him battling with anywhere from he could somewhere on Phil's tail for third. I thought Dexter faded in that. I thought Dexter looked fabulous by himself and is a little a bodybuilder. Compared to
I was sitting far back. I was watching on the screen a lot of it, I have to admit that. And I thought Dexter was not as sharp as he was at the Arnold. I know some of these guys are telling me I'm crazy. I don't know what I'm looking at. You were sitting close.
I had good
What,
seats.
what
I
did
was
you
dead
think of
center.
Dexter compared to the Arnold Classic, and how did he do here tonight?
I thought his conditioning was relatively close to the Arnold Classic, but I thought he was bigger and fuller here, and because of that, it gives him much more pop. And I was kind of surprised because he had been saying the whole time that he was going to come in bigger, but everybody says that. And when he first walked out, I thought he was drastically bigger than, not drastically, but he was definitely bigger than we've seen him. And it was enough of a notice that it was, enough of a notice from the Arnold to the Olympia. But I thought his conditioning was pretty good balance-wise from front to back, top to bottom. Now, granted, we've seen his glutes maybe a little bit tighter, a little bit harder.
Since he's smaller than the other guys, don't you think he needs that crazy graininess?
He does, but I'll tell you what, he's pretty complete. I think he's complete, and he's hard in the right areas. And especially like with Phil. Phil has always been hard in the right areas, but this year he wasn't. His muscle didn't pop in those areas. And I thought Dexter's physique did. I thought it popped in those areas. But I'm going to tell you, I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm going to tell you, I think the biggest issue was the fact that these guys came out and none of them fought. Every one of them just looked like they were just going through the motions. They didn't fight. There was a couple opportunities, and I think that was everybody. I think that was Dexter, which I was shocked because he's the veteran up there. He should have been the one guy that could have just went after.
Phil usually fights up there, too.
He was the one that was a little bit more aggressive, though, than the rest of them, but he is the champion. But there was a couple opportunities when they turned to the side that Dexter could have very easily backed up right next to him and battled him and really pushed him, like Cormier says there.
Chris Cormier, who do you think won prejudging?
Prejudging, I think Sean was probably the hardest from the side. I mean, I was happy to see Dexter brought in some sharpness, more back to how he did before. Dennis looked great. I mean, even the champ had some good parts, some parts not as good, a little bit flattish, a little bit through here.
Where does Heath fall in your mind?
See, here's the thing. I mean, there's the prejudging, and then there's like how
Where did he finish after prejudging? All right, enough said. We know what he's talking about. He didn't include him in his top three there. So where do you have Dexter Jackson falling?
You know what? I think
Who do you have winning better?
I have Sean winning the show.
Easily?
Not easily, but you know what? Here's what I think was impressive about Sean. He's a bigger man than Phil. That's one, and that counts for something.
Put a lot of size on this offseason.
A lot of size on. He's got some freaky shots. I think like the side tricep with the abs and the crazy Coleman-esque. Sort of Coleman-esque, Chad. Not because I hate when people go over the top and say, Coleman sort ofness in the from the side. Of course, he's got the crazy ab shot. He's got a front double that negates Phil's. Phil's looks midgety. He's got an H shape to his body now. I think the back lat spread Phil gave away to Sean due to Sean's waist and width. I thought Sean did enough to win, and I think Phil didn't. And I think that Wolf was pressing very hard on Phil, as was Dexter. I agree 100%.
So you got Rhoden winning.
I have Rhoden winning.
Where do you have Rhoden finishing?
I'll tell you, I mean, it's tough because here's the thing with Rhoden. He had some really strong shots, just like Chris said. But here's a couple things that I kind of knocked maybe Sean for. I thought he was way too relaxed on stage. I mean, there was a couple times when he literally had his hands on his hip and they called for him to quarter turn. And like he didn't battle enough. The other knock, which I'd never seen on him before, is his lower ab was a little bit poochy on some of the shots.
He let it hang out on a few shots.
Hang it out on a few shots. That being said, I thought that he was clearly bigger than Phil. I agree with the lat spread. I think that Phil's one shot that he's still pretty dominant on is that rear double bicep shot, and that's his kind of money shot. But I'll tell you what, he got hammered on the lat spreads. I'll tell you what, all the other three guys up there just wiped him on the lat spread, and then you started having to break things down. You've seen Dexter.
It's not. It's not good. It's not. Wait. It's not good.
Rhoden wiped definitely. Rhoden
It's not good when you have to start trying to rationalize why the champion should win a pose, because that's not a good sign that the champion was at his best. Let's get Ben Pakulski over here for a minute. I see him on the side. I want to get Ben's opinion. Cormier gave us his opinion. Ben, what's your opinion? Who did you have winning this prejudging?
I had this amazing pleasure of sitting between Chad Nicholls and Flex Wheeler and getting the commentary as we went, man. And it was pretty. Yeah, it was literally real play. But dude, I was a kid in a candy store, man. I grew up watching these guys. So from a pure, I'm a pretty passionate guy, man. And as Chad says, what were they doing, man? They got work, want it, passion, man. There's no effort, there's no passion. I'm like, dude, these guys realize that this was you're this close to winning.
Get whipped by Kai's ponytail. That's what happened.
Well, they need to realize they're this close to winning the Olympia, and all four of them are this close from winning the Olympia. And it feels like they don't realize it. They're like, what are you? Like I was saying after the show, what are you, tired? You've been training for 12 months. It's 30 seconds.
Who you got?
Stand there. Okay, from a pure bodybuilding perspective, I picked Dexter Jackson. I'm a conditioning guy. I think Dexter was by far the best conditioned on stage. Dennis Wolf in second, Sean Rhoden third.
All right.
That's from pure.
So you got the champ out of the top three.
Yeah, man. Everything else considered, I think that's the top three, man. It may not be the way it is, but that would be the way I see it. And maybe Phil in third and Rhoden in fourth.
Chris, are we at a point where we're going to actually have to start from a clean slate tomorrow, because it's so not? I mean, we've gotten 18 different opinions, and it seems as though it's wide open. Is it?
That's why it's bodybuilding. You got.
I have Sean Rhoden and Phil Heath tied for first, but that's just me. I think it's so close that I think tomorrow will decide who's going to win the show.
Yeah, I mean, I clearly believe, and I will be speaking with Chad, and not George. Since Chad.
George Farah told me he had Rhoden winning.
Well, then.
Although he said Kai would have won it had he been
the
here.
Interview. It's over. No, because I think I just think, you know what, we're in an age, we've really turned the corner. We're not going to have a Coleman, a Jay. Phil is not. Phil's never been a dominant Mr. Olympia. I'll ask Chad, how would have Phil done if he was battling Jay or Ronnie in 2004 with the width issue and the back lat spreads and the quads. So what it means is that there's not a dominant person here. If Ben Pakulski's talking about
speaking about dominant people, what happened to Big Ramy in your estimation? Was he fat? Was he holding water? What do you think?
Yeah, he was. They just brought him in way too big, and you can tell he has just drastically gotten worse and worse. And he was big, there's no doubt. I mean, he was big, but he was 30, 35 pounds.
Off season. Guest posing shape, right?
I mean, I clearly wouldn't have had him anywhere near the top five. And I'm a big Ramy fan. Yeah. I love his physique, but I love the possibility of thinking that what he would look like in shape.
Would he have won the show in shape?
285-pound Ramy wins the show clearly.
Were you disgusted seeing that you had worked with Ramy and then it kind of slipped through your fingers and he came in horrible, as you predicted, by the way?
Honestly, I did predict it. Honestly, I felt bad for him, but we're in Vegas and his team decided to bet the farm on George Farah, and I made the prediction that they wouldn't be able to handle the stress and they would cave in, and that's what happened. We saw a disaster. If you compare the way Ramy looked at previous showings, if Ramy was in his first New York Pro shape here, he would have given Phil a lot.
Yeah, he'd be right in the mix for sure.
And Dexter, because
Samir Benoot has the solution. He says, "Give me one night with him, nerves. I will take 20 pounds of water off him in one night, and he'll win tomorrow."
But I think a lot of people don't realize that when you deal with somebody that big, and Chris knows, it's a totally different.
They're not a normal person.
It's not, because most people, when they make a little mistake on something or the body goes a certain direction, you can correct that in a day or two. You can't correct that in a day or two. It takes a week, and when you do that 3 or 4 times, you're done. There is not that type of room for error, and I don't think he's had a long enough. I don't think anybody's ever had a long enough time with him that really understood how his body is going to work.
Is he not a 300-pound bodybuilder? What is an ideal weight? Chad said 285. What would you like to see him on stage?
Stop with the nonsense. The biggest guy we've seen, the two biggest bodybuilders we've really seen in the last 15 years, really in shape, has been Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler. Right. So Chad can tell you that they are nowhere near 315. and they have more muscle because they've been training more years and more real muscle than Ramy. So a good starting point for the team that set him up for this disaster would be a fucking calculator.
Well, what would be a good weight for him, do you think? If he says he was 370?
278, and this show would be good night, goodbye.
Agree?
And I agree. I don't think that it even matters about weight. Like,
Right.
you could literally, what's unbelievable to me is you could take, look, my son who's in the 3rd grade could basically just pull friggin' food away from him and get him in better shape than this, okay? I'm going to tell you right now. Like, I don't even know how you end up like this. It's idiotic to me. Idiotic.
Yeah, it's sad because you see that potential and you want to just grab a hold of him and shake
It's
him.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
All right, let's address the bear on everyone's shoulder, Kai Greene. Did he blow it here? I mean, was this his Olympia to win?
We're going to hear for the next friggin' year, okay, about what if.
Kai Greene last year's conditioning, does he win the Olympia?
Probably.
Chris?
This is what we'd be talking. I said this in the pregame show. If you take Kai Greene out of the equation, it favors 2 people. It doesn't favor Dexter Jackson. It favors Wolf's height and width, and it favors Rhoden's flow and shape. And when you take him away, it becomes a battle of Phil and an inferior Phil versus Rhoden, or Phil and inferior Phil versus the height and the width of Wolf.
Or Dexter's polish.
Or Dexter's polish, but I still think it's a big man's game. I mean, but having said that, I think he made, and we said this on the radio show, I said it was a catastrophic mistake, almost as big as mistake as Ramy coming in at 315.
Now, you know what I'm gathering, what you guys are probably gathering, is that there's so much controversy, there's so much minutia to dissect that no one knows who's even on top at this point. So tomorrow will certainly be the deciding factor, Chris.
I want to ask you guys one other question. Where did they line him up for first place? It felt like there's a rhythm to the prejudging.
I'll bet you Phil's in first place.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I mean, if you look at the comparisons, you could
By a hair.
Yeah, I mean, you could think that Wolf was potentially in first place because he was there, and then they moved him down. But then
Rhoden
you
and
could
Phil in the
flip
middle.
it. Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you could think that they moved him out and moved Rhoden in. I think that, again, there's no clear-cut winner. I think that's the thing that at least makes the show exciting.
Thank God it's tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Imagine deciding on tonight.
Yeah. I mean, it would be crazy. And I think, here's the thing. I mean, even though when you think about that, it's so close, but even looking at the physiques up there, and Chris will be able to talk about this too, there's only a couple guys up there that can really make drastic changes and continue and improve for tomorrow. A couple of the guys isn't. I say Rhoden and I say Wolf. Both of them can still really push the boundary. They can tweak it.
You don't think Phil can improve?
I don't think Phil, because here's the thing. He's already at a deficit. He is down. The only thing that they could do is try to bring him back up, and then they're going to risk smoothing him out more. Now, he does pop better when he's full. So
He did improve last year.
He did, but the key is going to be, but he wasn't as far off, so he wasn't as flat. So they're going to have to really watch that balance and really kind of watch it. Dexter, I thought, was good, and I don't think Dexter. I think
He won't improve.
He won't. But he'll maintain. He'll stay right there. He'll be the one. He'll be the one that's very consistent across the board. So I think it'll be interesting. I think that. I think Wolf can go a little bit more, and I think Rhoden can go a little bit more.
Well, what would you tell Chris to do with Rhoden?
I don't know. I'll tell you what. I mean, clearly, I clearly would like to see Rhoden a little bit drier. I think front of the thigh, and a little bit more through the midsection, a little bit drier, and it's lights out. Yeah.
You heard it from the experts. I'm Dave Palumbo with Chad Nicholls and Chris the Technician Aceto, RxMuscle.com.